Thank you for having me here, particularly given that we live in what should rightly be called God's own country. It was a term originally coined for some reason, Yorkshire, close to where I lived in the UK. But I think Norway has sort of deserved the moniker now. Let me tell you why. The World Bank, in its revised methodology, ranked Norway as the world's wealthiest country. So congratulations. You're also number one on the UN Human Development Index. I think you have been for a few years. Congratulations again. You do very well on the OECD Better Life Index, and the World Economic Forum ranks you as the most inclusive economy in the world. How wonderful and fantastic. A pat on your back, a pat on our back, given that I also live here now. At the same time, the Gender Gap Index shows that you are supposed to be number two just after Iceland on gender equality, and you are only number 3 in the rankings of the most equal countries in the world. How really absolutely wonderful, right? There is a nice little saying about Julius Caesar, which says something like, one good thing about Caesar was that Caesar never got flattered. And of course, Caesar was flattered. Well, one good thing about sort of Janteloven is supposed to be that we don't take ourselves too seriously and we don't get flattered. But I really hope you're flattered, because I'm going to take you down a notch now. So what was in common with all these great, fantastic rankings and indices? Well, the thing is, they're indices, they're rankings, right? All it tells you is you're better than your neighbors. All it tells you is that you're doing better than Germany. What does it tell us about the reality? Sadly, not much. I mean, it's very nice being the one-eyed in the land of the blind, but it'd be nice to just have both eyes, right? So the second part with the indices is that indices fail to capture what numbers don't measure. And these are the two big flaws in Norway's perception about its own greatness and the outside world's perception about our greatness. We have a very long way to go to perfection. I'm a lifelong feminist. I live here. We're supposed to be number 2 on gender equality. And frankly, every single day, I'm shocked at the sexism I see outside and in the workplace and everywhere else in Norway. You got 40% of women on the boards of public listed companies, but if you look at the top management, if you look at the power networks in Norway, my God, you have a long way to go. If you're named Knut, and if you're named Mohammed, and you apply in a blind test for exactly the same job with exactly the same qualifications, you're 25% less likely to be called for the job interview, right? If you look at children who are living in poverty, there's been an increase of about 34,000 in the past 10 years in Norway, of which 29,000 come from immigrant backgrounds. Wealth inequality in Norway, income inequality may be low. Wealth inequality is still very high. Even today, the top 1% of Norwegians have 3 times the amount of wealth as the bottom 60% of Norwegians. Right? You have a very long way to go to equality. Even today, people in poor municipalities have a life expectancy that is about 8 to 10 years lower than those who live in richer municipalities. If you've gone to university, you're expected to live 5 years longer in Norway than if you only went to high school. That is the sad reality of how far we have to go. Yes, we are the one-eyed in the land of the blind. But my God, we have sexism that is rife, we have racism that is rife, and we have nepotism that is rife. The truth be told, sexism remains important in Norway. We're not doing very well on the racism front. And on the nepotism, the truth is, who you know still matters far more than it should in a society that thinks of itself as meritocratic. Now, why does all of this matter? All of this matters because if you look at the Norwegian government's own expectations, 75% of our wealth in the future, over all generations of Norwegians to come, is supposed to come from human capital, right? Now, half of the women, or more, half of the population of Norway is expected to be women. Even if you have a slight discrimination against that, what does it do to the quality of your human capital, right? It's okay to sort of, I'm not saying it's ethically okay, but economically maybe okay to discriminate against migrants when you were a homogeneous society and migrants were 1 or 2%. But even from a narrow economic perspective, at a time when 15% of the Norwegian population is immigrant, you can't discriminate against migrants without having serious long-term economic consequences. So let me briefly conclude on this note. 75% of our wealth is supposed to come from human capital, and that must be the best human capital, which means it must mean equality of opportunity, if not equality of outcome, and we are very far from that. And if we fail to do that, if we fail to tackle the sexism, the racism, and the nepotism, the poverty, the net harm to the Norwegian economy is going to be 2 to 3 times than our total oil wealth. Let me leave you with that note. Equality really matters, even in Norway, and we have a long way to go. Thank you.